Oh, so, Lila and Petiwashte relatives, thank you for joining Friends of the Children-He Sapa or Wakayanja to Lakota for this cultural teaching that Lakshmi, Richard, Hmuya Mani, two dogs, will be providing for us, talking about, some of our ceremonial protocols and those types of things. And so today's teaching is provided by the South Dakota Humanities Council. And so I'll go ahead and hand it off to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Or I guess it's afternoon now. So I'm gonna talk about Ishinanti Awichalawampi, the female rite of passage. And what I learned, even though I'm a male, I had two older sisters, and I was quite young when they went through this ceremony, but I remember being there. Uh, the people that helped my sisters was my mother, my grandmother. Her name was Mary Afraid of Hawk, and she's a survivor of the Wounded Knee Massacre. And another old lady that lived in Pine Ridge towards the north along the creek, and her name was Jessie Sword, and she was a survivor of Wounded Knee Massacre also. So the one I remember the most, because when my older sister went through it, I just have vague memories of it because I was quite young. I must have been maybe 3, 4 years old. And then when my older, the one next to her, younger, when she went through the ceremony, I was about 6, 7 years old. So I remember that more in detail. And so how they did it for them was we didn't have, of course, we didn't have teepees in those days. There was teepees, but they were expensive and very few people owned them. And so what they did was they set up a wall tent, a white wall tent, and my second to the oldest sister sat in there for 4 days, and there was my mother got my grandmother Mary Afraid of Hawk, and then that when Jessie Sword uh, to come and help her. So they stayed in the tent with her for 4 days, and uh, they cooked for her and they instructed her. And on the fourth day, they dressed her. They went into this inipi, this lodge ceremony, early in the morning, and then they had a ceremony inside there of instructing her, and uh, they had her light a fire inside of a wood stove. Um, there was a wood stove in there for heat. So sometimes my grandfather, Thomas American Horse, would stay in there, even in the wintertime. And sometimes in the summertime, he'd stay in there. So we had a wood stove inside there where he kept warm. And sometimes I would go out there and sleep with him, build a fire for him, and he would make coffee inside there. But so my sister stayed in there the 4 days, and they gave her instruction. So that's my earliest recollection of what I seen the ceremony being done. And later on, I asked my mother like different things about the ceremony and what it represented. So that's where I was able to learn about these things, because I was always inquisitive of everything, whether it was had to do with our culture, our history, or our ceremonies. I would ask my grandparents, my parents, and my parents had me when they were like way up there in age, like in their 40s and my late 40s and early 50s. So it was like being raised by grandparents, also by my parents, and so they were both born in 1911. So they knew a lot of the old words and a lot of the old history. tell the stories, and they knew those old people that fought at the Little Bighorn, and those old warriors, those old Onchis. So uh, that's where a lot of what I learned is from about. So this is a picture on the front of two or three young girls that went through the ceremony, and these are the females that helped him. The one farthest to the left is Mahasani, my wife, and then my cousin Ramona White Plume, and then Cindy Gallego, my adopted sister, and then two Tacosa girls, and then my sister Angie Clifford, and another Tacosa, and then Christina Johnson and April Johnson, who's married to my grandson Thomas Yellow Cloud, and Thomas Cloud Horse is his name. So this took place in I think the town of Manderson in the village near the school. I think I remember it. So they went through their ceremony at that time. So the Ishnanti Awichalompi is one of the 7 sacred rites that was given to us, along with the sacred pipe by Desan Kokahewi, the white buffalo calf woman who brought us the sacred pipe. So it's one of the 7 rites of the Oyate brought by Ptesawi when she brought the sacred pipe. With it was the instructions on a Vikoshkalaka, a young woman, how they are to conduct themselves. So, like I said, the instruction comes from the unchis that are there. So they pick elder women to come and talk to them, give them instructions, and some of them come to teach them how to like do quill work, do beadwork, uh, finish some type of item that they're going to use on that last day. They're gonna the item is going to be used to adorn themselves. So it could be moccasins, it could be a belt, a knife sheath, earrings, whatever like that. But the teaching behind it is that you have to finish the craft that you're working on, or they say otherwise for the rest of your life you'll always like quit, or you wouldn't finish things in your life. Like you would go through a lot of jobs, or you would do a lot of you would start something, a project or a job or anything, and then you will quit. You will move to, and even it includes even marriage. Like they say that your marriages will fail in the future. Um, so they're taught about these things, and the first menstrual flow is right around the first time it happens. It's nobody really knows when it's going to happen, or even where it's going to happen. But the mother and the grandmother are urged to catch the first menstrual flow on some sage, and then they put the sage in a bundle along with sweetgrass and the menstrual flow. So the menstrual flow is caught in sage, and then it's wrapped in a red cloth with sweetgrass, and then it's tied in a plum bush. And so for 4 days, the young girl will watch her dreams, because a lot of times this is kind of like a young man's first vision quest. So they're told you're given guidance in what you're supposed to do in your life. So this young girl watches her dreams, and if she prays hard enough, she'll be given direction in her life. So my mother told me stories of elderly women that she met when she was young, and these elderly women were medicine women. They were healers, and they got the dream during the time of those 4 days during their ceremony. So that's why it's important to get to do it properly and to remember your dreams and to pray. So she knows of one medicine woman who got her dream while she was going through these 4 days during her first menstrual flow. So so it's important in that sense that they go through this ceremony. Their instructions also are part of their important role as a life giver. So they would talk to these young women on how to conduct themselves, and they tell them the story of um, through the story of through the creation stories where there's characters or there's people, spirits that are part of the creation story. So one is called Gnashkia, and it's somebody that it's a spirit that controls the emotions of like being reckless and not really following rules and not following like protocols like that. So they said that there used to be these buffalo among us called the Tatrankanganashkia. And so they called them crazy buffaloes, and they were mentally like insane. And all the other buffalo will stay away from them and not go near them because they'll fight to the death. And if they see like anybody or anything, they chase it. They don't care what it is, or they don't care who it is. There's stories of them where they chased hunters, up into caves and up onto trees, and they stayed around for at the bottom for days, and every now and then they'll run into that tree and try to knock them out of there. So they say that when a young man becomes overpowered by that spirit, then he has no regard for his actions, and there's stories of where that's when like things like rape or taking advantage of a young girl happens. So there's a part of the ceremony that where I'll talk about where the Tatranka Ganashkian comes in to the teepee to tempt the young girl. So they say that this young girl is always supposed to take care of herself during this time. And nowadays, they don't wear, they call it Ishnati Cheganaka. It's like a cloth, a soft buckskin that they wore between their legs and then around their waist. And they had medicine inside there uh, to purify like their blood, their flow of their blood, so that they don't catch infections and or have female problems uh, like that. So, and then one of the things they put in there is uh, what they call wastemina, the good smelling plant that grows along the creeks, and we use it in the ceremony. We rub it on ourselves. So they put that inside there, and then they would wear that. Um, so it would come up kind of like a breechcloth, but it's for women. They call it Ishnat So, that was worn inside during the times of their menstrual flow. So they say that don't not just throw your Ishnati Tacheganaka anywhere, but keep it safe, like in a bag, and burn it in the fire. So now, in modern times, I remember my mother telling my female relatives, especially my nieces and uh, my granddaughters, who would be her great granddaughters, she would tell them to take care of, don't just leave their tampons anywhere because that's disrespectful. And she said a bad spirit can overpower you. So during the time that my granddaughters are like that, they stay isolated. So me and my wife put our money together and we built a little house behind our house. adjoining house, and that's where my daughters, and that's where my granddaughters stay when they're on their time, when they're living with us. So, and then they gather up their tampons and burn them. So they just don't leave them in their trash because of that belief that a bad spirit can get possession of them and overpower you and make you sick or make you mentally ill. And so they say a saying is that they say ni glu on hi ha hanta ni chinchaki hasli thankana sampik. So they instruct these young girls in this ceremony. If you respect yourself, then when you have children, they will not have sores or they will not have like a constantly snotty nose. Like they say that's a symbol of a woman, the mother that did not respect herself during the time of before she had children and during the time she had children. So that goes along with also the teaching that children's clothes are never sat on or stepped over or their toys or anything like that, because the woman's spirit is so powerful that it can overpower not only children but also males like men. Uh, so they're always reminded, and to always remember that the woman, the Wina, holds the future generations in her hands. So from her, because she's a life giver, um, from her, all of these instructions will come, and how she takes care of her children and her home will be a reflection of the children, how they grow up and what they know. So they teach the children to be respectful and to respect elders and older people. Uh, One of the beliefs is that we still hold is that when someone comes to your home, then you feed them, and if you don't have no food, then you at least give them coffee or water. Or sometimes they say a teaching is "Nako I chete etan yak wichayako ash echanukte." So there's this teaching that even if you have to feed your guests what food you were going to eat, you say you take it out of your icheta is you took it out of your own mouth, but not literally. What they mean is what you were supposed to eat, you gave to your guests. So that's the virtue of being generous all the time. So they're taught a lot of times the young girls on how to do that. So my wife trained like my daughters and my granddaughters how to do that. So if you come to my home and one of my daughters is there or one of my granddaughters, then they'll automatically do that. They'll either feed them something to eat, coffee, or even just give them a cup of water. But that's a part of our teaching as Lakota people. So the transition from Wichinsala to Wikoshkalaka is made during this ceremony. So you're no longer a little girl. You become a Wikoshkalaka, a young woman. So during that time of the 4 days, you're taught the instructions on how to conduct yourself. You One of the things is the social boundaries are taught to the young girl. So like when you're still considered a little girl, you can play with your male cousins, and you can like even wrestle with them and all of that because you're still considered a child. But when you go through this ceremony and you're considered a Wikoskalaka, then you can no longer do that. You can't wrestle with them, or you can't sit near them or beside them like that because now you're a young woman and you have to respect yourself and respect your uh, male relatives because we feared something which was called incest among our people. That was taboo to have any kind of like wrong thoughts or any kind of wrong relationships long ago, and it still is, even though a lot of times it's being that that taboo is no longer followed a lot of times. So we have today intermarriage. A lot of people are even blood related are close, but they have relationships and even get married. So there are Wičhoļ'an oina jitopa, the four parts to the ceremony. So the young girl enters the teepee as a Wich'en and emerges as a Wikorskala. So one of the things that is done there is when you're still considered a girl, like a Wichinchala, a little girl or a small girl, or even a girl that's in their right before they start their menstrual cycle, they're still considered a little girl or a young girl. So their braids will be when they braid their hair, their braids will hang to their back, towards down the back. But once you emerge before they emerge as a Wikoskalaka, they move their braids to the front to signify that they are now Wikoskalaka. So they are now of marrying age and childbearing age. So one of the things that was really feared among our people long ago when we moved about freely and hunted buffalo was they say that uh, when there was a promiscuous woman in camp, uh, the buffalo would move away. They wouldn't come near the people. So because when that happens, of course, the people will go hungry. So there will be like a famine because there's stories among our people that because of the sacredness of these buffalo, there's stories of them that they suddenly vanish, even though there's hundreds and thousands and millions of them. They would suddenly be gone, and those hunters will ride for days and days and days and not see one single buffalo. So that was something that always puzzled our people when they lived out free like that, following the buffalo. So they would they knew that it was because of the sacredness of the buffalo. So we had among us buffalo dreamers, men that had a spiritual connection to the buffalo, to the Pate Oyate, and can communicate with them, and even had the ability to contact them and bring them closer through a ceremony. So they would, whenever the people were starving like that or hungry because the buffalo were gone, and they relied on these men to have ceremonies. So they would gather all the dreamers in all the dreamers in a lodge, and they would do their ceremonies. They would open their bundles and sing their songs and pray and contact the buffalo and find out why they're gone, uh, and then make prayers to bring them back. And then among a lot of the medicine men, they had these stones that they had certain stones that could do certain things. So they had stones that could look for buffalo. So these men they weren't buffalo dreamers. They were called the Uipi, and they had the ability to send these stones out to find buffalo, or they can send out a stone to find a missing person, or they could send a stone out to uh find like a missing horse. And then they had stones to go and find certain medicines. So if a person came to them and was ill with some type of illness, and they found out through the spiritual help of their spirit helpers that they needed a certain medicine, then they would send a stone up to find that medicine where it's at, and then that stone will come back and tell the healer that the stone was here, maybe 10 miles away, 5 miles away, describe the location, and they would go and get it. So they had these stones that could do that. And They also had stones that can that were like guards where they would watch a certain area around the camp, and then they would warn the traditional healer, the holy man, if uh, the enemy entered into that perimeter. So we were always like taught that. So so the story goes that a lot of times these healers will say that there was a promiscuous woman in camp, so that's why the buffalo went away. So they would go through a purification ceremony uh, of all their bundles, and then they would have that young woman go through purification and the inipi, and then they would pray. And they say that there's stories of where the buffalo will just reappear again, where there wasn't any, to suddenly be thousands of buffalo. So um, the I guess the chastity among our women was really important, and it was valued among our people. So during the time they were given 4 days instruction by the elder women, and they lit a fire, and they learned the significance of the fire because they say the fire belongs to the female in the like the mother or the grandmother in a family. So that fire is hers. So she's the one that lights it for warmth inside the teepee, but also to cook for the meals to keep everybody fed and healthy and alive. So she had a special connection to that fire. So they would light that fire to symbolize that young girl will light the fire to symbolize the fact that she's now a young woman, and that she will someday take care of the fire. So fire was really significant to our people. In a lot of our ceremonies, the fire is the central part of a lot of ceremonies. Like the inipi, it's how we, heat the rocks and use the rocks for steam. Um, so the fire, there's even songs to the fire. There's songs that are connected to the fire, and they would sing that song like in the Sundance, and uh, before they lit the fire for the when the ceremony began. So they would sing a song to that fire that that was specially for that fire. So they would sing that song, then they would light the fire, and there's stories of putting tobacco into the fire, and there's stories that were when the song wasn't sung, then that fire wouldn't uh, burn. So they sing a certain song, and a lot of holy men have their own songs to the fire. And then the same as a lot of holy men light a fire when a person's going to go on a hamblecha, and that person stays up there 4 days. That holy man will keep that fire going for 4 days till that person returns from the hill. So they would sing that song too, also for that fire. So in the ceremony of uh, Ganashkia, uh, the spirit of that makes people insane or animals insane, they say is a part. The spirit, the temptation is part of that spirit. So they are learned that they are taught and they're not to give in to temptation. So that is where the buffalo dancer comes in, who represents Atkanka Ganashkia. And so he comes in, and this young girl sits on a buffalo robe, and she's already painted, and her braids are already to the front. And right after some women do it before the fire, and some women do it after. But right before she builds the fire, then they sing a song, and this young man comes in representing Atkanganashkia, and he comes in and dances around clockwise in the teepee and goes behind her. So he circles 4 times. So 4 times when he goes behind her, then she puts some sage that she has on her lap, and this represents the purification of, like say, like say, the temptation that this young man will try to do, and tempt her into like having sexual relations before marriage. So this young man plays that part. So they're taught about teen pregnancy and not to give in when a young man comes along, because that's a reality of life and it will happen. So a lot of times the temptation is there for these young people, especially at that age. When you're when we're teenagers, then our hormones are like racing out of control almost. So uh, she's urged not to experiment in sex like that. And so now, because this teaching isn't happening, there's a lot of early teen pregnancy among our people. Uh, the teachings have not been passed down from grandmother to mother to daughter now. So the teachings is that you do not give in to sexual relations till you're married on your wedding night, and to look. There's teachings within looking for a husband that will provide for you. So there's a saying I heard my mother say, is that she told my daughters, she told my sisters, she said, "Wichasha wanji ataya hanta, no petroki, oluspeki, no petroki, ich ite hanta, wichasha kile, woashi wohiti ke hecha." So she said, uh, when you hold his hand, if his hand is rough, that means he's a hard worker. But if his hands are soft, then you know that he's not a hard worker, that he probably doesn't work at all. So if you meet a young man like that, think twice about becoming serious with him, because uh, you're the one that's going to be providing for the family, because he'll probably lay around and not work. So when I tell that now, even to my granddaughters and daughters, they think it's amusing, but I tell them that I say don't engage in sexual relations early, and go to places where when you go to college, then that's where you'll probably meet a man that, who, in my eyes, and in your eyes, will be worth marrying, because you're probably going to meet an engineer or a doctor or somebody like that. I said, don't have your eye on somebody in high school, and just because he's a good athlete or he's popular, then you end up, having relations with him, and then pretty soon there's children, and there's no sometimes love involved, and you're gonna get with him, and he's gonna turn out to be lazy. Just because he's a good athlete now does not mean he'll be a good provider in the future. So I talk to them, my daughters like that, and I seen my mother talk to my sisters like that. But we see it happening all the time now, um, because of early teen pregnancy, and it's because I feel we've gone away from this ceremony. We've forgotten about these things and these teachings, the importance of it. And so, because of that, there's a breakdown within our society. And so, one of the things that's really happening too a lot, and I see it all the time, is these young men and young women engage in sexual relations, and then they have children. They're not mature enough. That boy is not mature enough to be a dad, or doesn't want to be a dad, doesn't really love this young woman to stay around and say, okay, I'll be here and I'll help you raise, our child. So they'll leave. They'll just up and leave. And then the young girl decides being a mother isn't all that. So they'll abandon the child, or else yeah, they'll abandon the child, and then the grandparents. A lot of times there's no grandpa, so just grandma is raising the child by herself. I see that around me in every community, everywhere I go, because these things are allowed and are happening, and I can't get over that. I've seen older women allow young women to uh, allow young men to come to their home and stay with their daughters and their granddaughters, and then there's going to be a teen pregnancy or an early pregnancy, but it happens all the time. Like it's almost like, okay, I'll allow them to be here, but it'll be okay because nothing's going to happen. So the importance of chastity and purity is really important. Like I said, the buffalo would go away if there was a woman in camp that was promiscuous. But virgins, uh, Vitanshana, we say in our language, are used in ceremonies because of their purity. And this purity is looked upon favorably by the spirit people. And a young woman that is like that keeps her virginity, is uh, held on a high regard by the spirit people. So you see that we use them in ceremonies. There's stories of the different dreamers and healers using virgins in their ceremony, like the bear medicine men when they doctored, they had virgins inside it. And then the elk ceremony, Hechaka Ihambala or Umpha Ihambala, the elk dreamers, they used virgins in their ceremonies too. And so, uh, and then we use virgins when we go to strike the Sundance tree. Their purity is brought into that ceremony because it's powerful. So the purity is, they say, Wa'akashoteshni, means that's how they say the purity of these virgins. Um, so that's what's important. A lot of times that their purity is used because of, so they're used in ceremonies like that. So those are the ones that I could think of as Sundance and then the doctoring ceremony of different dreamers. So my mother told me the ceremony of an elk dreamer that she went to back in the 1920s here in the community of Porcupine, and uh, he said that these two women, young girls, he kicked them out of the community, and they were virgins, and so they were dressed up and they were painted with red paint. They came into the ceremony in the log house that had a dirt floor, so he he put some mold dirt down on the ground, and he had these virgins step on that mold dirt and leave a track. And then he said he was singing and he was shaking a rattle like that, and then he hit on that virgin's track that she left on the floor on that in that mold dirt, and he said that rattle fell to pieces. So he covered it with a piece of red cloth and he sang, and then he pulled that red cloth apart away like that, and here that rattle was back complete. So he when he finished the ceremony, he administered a medicine to this woman he was doctoring. And then so in one bowl he had the medicine, the other bowl he had water. So the virgins, one of them gave him the medicine to drink, and when she got done drinking it, then he gave her the other one a bowl of water, so she gave it to her to drink, and then he fed her a certain kind of food, uh, and then so those virgins are the ones that fed that woman that got the healing. And my mom said, judging from what was wrong with her, she had a sore on her side and it wouldn't heal. So she said, when I think about it now, I think she had cancer. She said it was under her right side, under her breast. So she said that you could see way into her body through that hole. And here, right after the ceremony ended, the hole closed up. And she said that woman got healthier and healthier, and she was completely cured. So those are how important virgins were at one time in our ceremony. So the next thing is to complete a project during these 4 days. So like I was saying earlier, they have to complete this project, or they say that throughout their life they would always like give up or not finish things that they started. So it's important that whatever they started, they finish it. And I've seen I've seen one young girl that went through the ceremony through the direction of my wife. I seen one finish a pair of moccasins and beat it around the bottom of it. So she was really quick. She worked on it for almost all of the 4 days. And I've seen another young girl finish a knife sheath. And then I seen one young girl who was taught how to do quill work by a auntie that came to give her instructions. So she learned to do quill work in those 4 days, and now she does quill work to make a living for herself. And she's taken college classes, but that's how she makes money, is she does quill work. So she learned that during her ceremony. So on the fourth day, Ampetu Ichitopa, the elders enter the teepee to give teachings. The Wičhoļ'an is dressed in new traditional clothes. She is reminded that she is entering a new time in her life. So her hair is braided and her part of Che'ozan is painted red, so that she will always be recognized by the spirits that she went through this ceremony. So even though the paint is washed away, you no longer see it. It's still there according to the spirits. So they see her somewhere like in trouble or sick or something like that. They would help her because they know, they recognize her, and she went through this ceremony. So you see, I see that now at powwows, these young girls are painted. And I always wonder, did they go through the ceremony, or do they just paint themselves because they saw somebody painted like that? But at one time, you only did that if you went through this ceremony. So a lot of things are changing today. And then, as I mentioned earlier, her braids are moved to the front. So before, when you're a little girl, your braids hang down the back, but now your braids are moved to the front. And then she lights the fire in the teepee, signifying that she takes care of the fire in the home. And then that's when Chastity dances in to tempt her. So there's a certain song that goes with that when this young man dances. So there's different parts of in the creation story of these spirits that were here when the earth was created, the creation of the different parts of the world, the earth, the sun, and the moon. So that spirit's name was Ganesh, but the symbol of him is Ganeshkian, is where Ganesh, it comes from Ganesh, the spirit of Ganesh. There's one called Woshkehan. So Woshkehan is the one that creates turmoil in the world. They say that it's his spirit that sends down the meteorites and asteroids to do destruction, and that's how the earth was changed several times. So there's scientific evidence now that of our stories where there was a giant flood, and there's one also in the Bible of the Christian that there was a flood, and there really was a flood, and what it was a giant asteroid that hit the Gulf of Mexico and caused the tsunami that covered the whole world. So our stories of how we survived as a people are part of the Ohunkanka, like the creation story. So this one, Woshkeha, is the spirit that sent that asteroid down. So there's also another asteroid that hit the Earth that wiped out the dinosaurs. And then there's another one, Woshkeha sent down a planet that hit the Earth and knocked it sideways several billion years ago. So that's why the Earth spins today, because it's trying to ride itself back up. So it knocked the Earth sideways, so the Earth spinning, try to ride itself to make itself go upright again. So, these spirits that lived were powerful and could do those things long ago. So I talked already about Tatranka Ganashkian and what his purpose was to tempt this young girl. So there's a lot of Tatranka Ganashkians out there that will try to tempt these young girls that are out there. So in conclusion, the Wikoshkalaka emerges from the teepee as a young woman, no longer a girl. Then a song is sung for her, and she circles the teepee 4 times, symbolizing long ago she would circle the inside of the camp circle. But this time, because we don't live in camp circles anymore, then she circled the teepee 4 times. That's like presenting her to the people now that she's a young woman now. And then the feast follows the ceremony, so everybody eats, and then gifts are exchanged to like the people that came to light the fire for the inipi, because there's an inipi in the morning before the ceremony starts. And then there's gifts are exchanged to people that came to sing, to the young man that represented Tatranka Ganashkian, and then to the unchis that came to talk to the Wichinchala, who then became the Wikoshkalaka. And then the ceremony is completed at that time. So that concludes the presentation.
Wopila like she, and I know that there's these ceremonies, they can go on. Is it usually during the summer? It could go on all year round.
It can happen anytime. Like one of my granddaughters started her time and it was January. So we set up the teepee below our house and then she went inside there. Of course, she had a fire at night, but it was during the winter time she did the ceremony. So it's supposed to happen right when the young girl starts her time, her menstrual flow.
Okay. Wopila like she. And at this time, we have a little bit of time left. Does anyone have any questions or comments? We have a question in the chat from Christina Wedner. She said, "Thank you for teaching us today. Is there mother and grandmother with the young girl for all 4 days of the ceremony?"
Yes, the grandmother and the mother is in there with her. You spend the night with her. You bring her food, and like you have a fire going in there if it's cold. And then they take her to the bathroom like that.
Opila. Vida Dogskin has a question. She said, "I've heard it a woman's time called their moon. What is the significance with that?"
The The cycle of the moon is the same as a female, 28 days. So every 28 days is the cycle of the moon, and every 28 days is supposed to be the cycle of a woman. So that's why they say moon. And there was a time long ago during this time that the ceremony happened, they would give them a stick that's painted, or some of them are really decorated real nice with full work and stuff. And there was 28 notches on that stick. So that's how they kept track of when their next time was going to be. So I've seen these in a museum, and these people that run the museums don't know what those sticks are or what they're for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Wopila Lakshi. Another question. What if there are no plum trees where I live? Can I use a different tree to hang the bundle?
You could use a cherry tree or a cottonwood tree.
Okay. A cherry or cottonwood?
Yeah.
Wopila. We have another question. If they have already had their time, can they still do the ceremony? Can they still take part?
Yes, they can do it. What they will get will be the instructions and the blessing from it.
Okay. Wopila. And then someone just said, oh, pila maya ye.
Mm.
Ashte. Do we have any more questions? I see a lot of folks that are listening today, and they in particular too, such as, Helene Gaddy, and I know Tui Linda, and, your Tui Ethleen helps in these too, and Tui Angie. I see
Mm-hmm.
she's on here, and
Mm-hmm.
just really grateful for all of you for assisting and helping and helping us relearn who we are, reteaching us, right? And so, Wopila.
Oh,
Okay, I have a comment. A lot of love from Paris, France, and thank you so, so much for your teaching. Blessing.
thank you.
Whitney, your Takoja girl said, Wopila lala.
Mm.
Bill, he said, Zuntashni. What does that mean?
You said what?
Zuntashni.
Zunteshni means like
Zuntashni.
a woman of high regard.
Wopila. Is there a need for herbs for people's ceremony? I'm a gardener, and what kind of tobacco do you grow? And herb are women used in cloth? Elisa Epstein.
Well, in this ceremony, that medicine they call Wakpewashtemna,
Mm-hmm.
that plant that smells good they use in ceremonies, that's used in this ceremony.
And what's
They
the
use it.
Western?
I think it's called wild bergamot or something like that.
Yes, wild bergamot. Mm-hmm.
That's
Opula.
used that during that time she wears that belt with that medicine in her, so it helps her. Because there's stories of women that got infected through their menstrual flow, and some even died.
Mm. Well, Opula for sharing. Like people are saying thank you. We have another that is asking, is there a passage for a grandmother? Is there a ceremony for a grandmother?
Uh, well, when they reached a certain year, I remember like my mother and my aunties, uh, when they reached the age of 60 years old, they would be presented a necklace with 60 beads, and then as they lived a year, they would add a bead for every year. And so whenever my mother died, then my wife inherited her necklace. So it's like when in the old days, because we didn't have calendars and stuff, then that's how uh, the Unchi's age was kept track of, and it was kind of a symbol of her role as an Unchi also. So if you
Mm,
see a lot of old pictures of Unchis, you'll see that necklace.
and you do see those.
Yeah.
Mm. Oglala. Any more questions or comments? I think we have another here. Oh, what kind of necklace? What kind of beads?
Just whatever you have, My
Mhm.
the ones that my mother had were like glass beads, and they were red beads. But it depended on like whatever you had and what you wanted to use.
Mm.
But one of the things is I've never seen it among other Lakotas. I just seen that among the Oglalas. So I don't know if like Sichangu or people from Cheyenne River or Unkwapka have that belief or not.
But specific to your area.
Yeah,
And she has another question, and they start wearing those when they're older, right? When they hit around that age 60 as an
yeah,
elder.
yeah.
Oh, Pila. Okay, I think we have another question. Pilama Yeye Lekshi for sharing. Um, can an older woman after 20 to 50s have an Ishnati ceremony?
No, it's only when if you missed it by just a little while, up to a year, then after that you can't have the ceremony.
Mm, so when you're older.
Yeah, you can't have it when you're older.
Mm, what can be done if they never had one and they're in that age?
Mm, Probably, I would say they could go on a vision quest to make the prayer and the transition.
Amblecha.
Yeah.
Okay. Wopila. Wopila. Well, it is 1 o'clock. Wopila Tonka, thank you all for coming. Wopila Lekshi for spending your time with us, being generous with your time and spending it with us.
Mm.
Right after this teaching, you'll receive a short survey just regarding our teaching and all of those things. And just want to say thank you. Have a wonderful day and Doksha Ke Wachiankik Day, and we'll see you later, Lekshi.
Mm. Look,